project that we're working on is the decorative live dough and introducing it as a marketing concept and introducing a wine bottle as the focal point. So this is what you need for mise en place. You need a straight-necked wine bottle that you're going to cover with some parchment paper so it doesn't stick to the bread. So you put the bottle on the parchment paper, get a rough measurement on here, and then just cut it from top to bottom. Take this, roll it up. Take some tape and wrap it around the entire belly of that bottle. And you have to, because it's a silicone treated paper, you have to go all the way around, otherwise the tape won't stick. You do this to the neck as well, and that's just part of the mise en place component. So one thing that you want to do with this dough is make sure you keep it nice and moist. To test it whether it's ready to work with, I just roll it out on the table and make sure that I get a nice smooth log from it, and if it's nice and smooth, you're ready to go. So the weights that I'm working with is 2,300, 660, and these are intervals of 160 grams, 140 grams, and 120 grams. And all I'm gonna do is quickly pre-shape them like a baguette and let them rest for a second. On this one, I'm going to shape it like a boule, compressing down and pulling back. I will take this piece over to the sheeter and sheet it down to about a number 10 so that I can fill the sheet pan space with a nice oval shape. These I'm gonna elongate with a tapered front, like so. These are gonna be wheat stalks. Once I've elongated these, purposely because the weight are different, I make one short, a medium one, and a long one. I'm going to braid them together into a 3 braid. Nice and loose. And then once it's braided and final shaped, I make sure I cover everything with a plastic bag so that no crust can form. With the remainder of the dough, I'm going to take about 1/3 visually, not by weight, and I'm going to flatten it out, cut little strips off of here, and then cut them into small, even units. These are going to be the grapes. Roll them good and tight. Make sure and take into consideration that these should be not too large because everything that we're working on right now is going to double in size after it's proofed. With the 660 gram units, you're going to start to elongate them out to about 6 feet in length. And I find it's easiest if you do this in multiple stages. So start one, go to the second one. And I purposely leave the ends a little fatter so that when I start the braid afterwards, I can extend it and make the entire braid length a little longer. Let these two relax, go to the third one. And if for some reason the traction is not correct, you can always take a little bit of water, spray your surface so that you get better traction. This should go as fast as you comfortably can with a good amount of downward force. Be careful not to pull on the dough, otherwise you run into the problem of it potentially tearing. After you get to the third one, start from the first one again and continue the rolling process. So after you have them rolled out to the desired thickness and length, what I recommend is always start braiding from the center point. That gives the least amount of stress on the braid. And keep it good and loose when you're doing this. And as you get towards the end and you have these larger pieces, re-moisten them and extend them. This will give you an extra 4 or 5 inches on the braiding length without having to put too much stress in that center portion. Once you get to the center of the braid, it's best to rotate it over so that you can continue in the same braiding sequence. And then when you pick it up, just be careful not to stretch it too much. Grab it on the ends and on the belly, and just again protect everything with plastic so that no crust can form. So after you've sheeted out the main body component, that's at 2,300 grams, get it into sort of an oval-like shape. Take your wine bottle, and you're going to use a little bit of pan release to make sure it doesn't stick. And again, keep in mind, as mentioned before, to use a straight-necked bottle right here. Otherwise, you're going to have a serious problem removing it. Place it to the left. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your braid and you're going to start at the 1 o'clock position right here, and you're going to clean up that edge. Make sure you don't have to pull this together, otherwise it creates a lot of stress on the braid and it's potentially going to tear it. And also be careful that you don't lay it on top of the braid, that it sort of meets the main body at about a 45-degree angle. I'm not too concerned about how clean this edge is. I'm just going to compress it together. I then take the small braid with the wheat stalks, going to drape it over the neck of the bottle and gingerly place it into this area right here. And now I can just play with the placement of these wheat stalks up along that ridge. Sometimes what I also like to do is just give it a little bit of a twist along that edge. And place it so that you like the position, because after this there's no more moving. I then take the rounded grapes and place them in a grape-like shape along the right side of the bottle. Again, always keep in mind that these are small enough so that when they proof, they don't look overbearing and look more like a plum. Next thing I do is I spray it lightly with a bit of water, cover it with plastic, and I work on the rest of the details. So the piece that I'm going to use for the leaf stencil, I'm going to sheet to a number 2 and then trim it out using an X-Acto knife along the curved perimeter of the leaf. The cooler the dough, the nicer the cuts. If you need exact and clean shapes, it's not a bad idea to sheet your dough and actually chill it or even freeze it so that when you cut the shapes, it keeps them perfectly clean. For the stem portion of it, I'll just use a pastry wheel because it drags less, and then remove your cut pieces. I take the edges and just soften them so that from a cross-sectional view, they look nice and crisp. And for the stem, I just take it and elongate it and make it just a little bit round. To place the leaf, I usually go to the right side of the grape, lay it down, take the little stem, and just gently place it into the braid. I then cover it again, so that again no crust can form, and I continue working on it. The rest of the dough that I have left over, I sheet out to a number 1 on a metric sheeter, and then I use circle cutters, counting from the center. This is the number 6 position, this is the number 7 position. Either will work. I usually like to use the larger one, and I cut out of here everything into circles. For the leaves on the bottom of the roses, I'm going to take the edge and cut out 3 for my circle. And I need a total of 20 of these. And again, what I always tell students is that whether you have 20 or 30 of them, it's not that much extra work. So the dough that I've sheeted out to number 1, and all these circles are going to be used for my roses. I roll the center nice and tight. I take the next petal, loosely roll it along the interior, take my finger, pull it back a little bit, making sure that everything is on the same height. I go opposite of my previous petal, line it up again parallel, rotate it around, open it up, and I will add 3 more petals, and every time I add one, I pull it further back. You gotta make sure this is nice and loose, otherwise this will look like a little cinnamon roll in the middle of your decorative showpiece. I'll take the last 3 and I'll just give them a quick pinch. And after you've finished the rose, you want to make sure that when you make the cut that you're really close to the top. You don't want to be too low. Cut. And you've got 1 rose done. So with the leftover dough, I'm gonna make some tendrils. I make the center fat with some nice tapers to them. All of this has to be prepped before you can put the roses on your finished piece. And I'll usually use 2 per rose.